Hey guys, tonight we slip into the hush of a Song Dynasty bedroom. Not the kind with silks and serenades, but the back corner of a small apothecary's flat above his shop, where charcoal dust lingers in the rafters and something slightly medicinal wafts from under the bed. You're perched on a creaky bamboo mat, calloused toes curled against cold stone tiles, with a pillow filled not with feathers but mung beans on the rickety nightstand. A carved wood lamp, a chipped inkstone, and, yes, what might be crushed oyster shell in a tiny silk pouch. You probably won't survive this if you're expecting a quick, modern ER visit. But if you're ready to treat headaches with turtle shell and bad dreams with deer musk, you'll fit right in. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and the time you're listening. I love seeing how far this sleepy little show travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The nightstand in question is little more than a lacquered crate, water-stained, ink-dappled, and humming faintly with the ghosts of 40 failed tinctures. On top of it rests a lopsided ceramic jar labeled, "For sleeping, not dying." In your own slanted brushwork. The jar contains a powder you mixed last week, calcined seashell, powdered amber, a pinch of longian fruit, and one moth wing, crushed delicately between rice paper sheets. It's not technically in the Bureau of Pharmacology's approved list, but your clientele tend to snore more and complain less after a pinch of it stirred into hot water. To its right, a scroll of Su Shi's poems, water, warped and soot smudged from late night rereads. You've underlined his line about dreams being like old friends across misted bridges. It's comforting, even if Su Shi was exiled when he wrote it. Exile, like insomnia, is mostly about managing your expectations. Next to the scroll is your inkstone. Rectangular, carved with dragons that look vaguely nauseated. You grind a pine soot inkstick across it before bed most nights, jotting herbal notations or small reminders like Bull Peer Peel for Mistrick. Chen's daughter's coughing dog. You suspect the dog might be imaginary, but the Peer Peel is real. Behind the inkstone, half hidden, is a bronze spoon, not for soup. This spoon measures exactly half a quyen, roughly 1.875 grams, and has been in your family since before the Jurchens sacked Kafing, or so your grandfather claimed before he used it to scoop out fermented bean paste. There's also a glazed earthenware cup, rim chipped from when you dropped it while dosing yourself with rhubarb root last winter. Cold fingers, slick with sesame oil, long story. It now holds dried cried chrysanthemum blossoms and a curled up centipede you once used to treat a fever that may have just been performance anxiety. Underneath the nightstand is your quiet box, a cedar tray of sleep aids you try not to overuse. One drawer smells like camphor and moldy silk. Inside is a yellowing sachet labeled Good Dreams. It contains nutmeg, cinnamon bark, and one slightly worrying clove. Next to it lies an old sachet from a customer who said it would summon your ancestors. You never had the nerve to open it, but sometimes it rustles. And oh, the pillow. You lie back onto it with a soft crunch. It's stuffed with roasted millet husks, not comfy, not soft, but oddly grounding. In the Song Dynasty, soft pillows are considered suspiciously decadent. True sleep, according to the physician Shen Kuo, begins in discipline and ends in clarity. Historians still argue whether Shen Kuo actually believed that, or if his own neck just really hurt all the time. The room is dim, but not dark. Your oil lamp, refilled with sesame oil and a strip of cotton, glows steadily. You adjusted the wick to minimize smoke, having once read that lamp soot can cause shadow coughs. No one agrees what shadow coughs are. You suspect it's just what happens when people whisper too much in winter. Above your bed frame hangs a scroll of Zhongjing's treatise on cold damage, annotated by your former teacher, who always smelled like vinegar and lavender. You occasionally argue with his notes aloud, especially when he insisted that cooked earthworm was best taken with plum wine. You tried it? Once. Never again? Somewhere in the apothecary below, a mouse skitters past a jar of candied hawthorn. You make a mental note to buy more sticky rice paper for traps. The mouse has become your midnight coworker, and last week it dragged away a very small ginseng root you swore you'd stored properly. Your last glance before sleep falls on the small shelf above your head, where a jar of powdered tortoise shell, expensive, cracked, and absolutely useless without licorice root, sits beside a folded scrap of silk. Inside the silk, a tiny silver bell said to ward off sleep demons. It doesn't, but you like the sound it makes. You settle under your quilt, hemp, patched, heavier than it looks. Outside, the moon hangs crooked in a smoggy sky, and a bamboo wind chime knocks softly against the window frame. Somewhere, a neighbor coughs. You breathe in powdered incense, half sandalwood, half mystery spice, from a traveling trader who once said it came from the west. You didn't believe him, but the dreams that night were strange and vivid. One involved a talking goose and a perfectly balanced apothecary shelf. And just like that, your eyes begin to flutter. The ink dries in the stone, the lamp wick leans slightly, and the nightstand, your cluttered, fragrant, slightly haunted nightstand, keeps watch. You wake not with a jolt, but with the gentle crunch of millet husks beneath your ear and the sound of a neighbor shuffling to their courtyard toilet in felt slippers. The lamp has sputtered out. Morning has not arrived, but you're not ready to drift again either. So your fingers seek out the scroll half, unfurled beside your bed, the pillow book of herbal dreams. It's not a pillow book in the risque Heian sense, though there are a few eyebrow-raising prescriptions involving deer antler powder and very specific massage oils. This book is more sleepy. Less poetry, more mnemonic diagrams shaped like kidneys. You unroll a section devoted to night visions, a kind of dream almanac matched to symptoms and seasonal QI flow. According to this chart, dreaming of falling teeth could mean unresolved grief. Or mercury poisoning. Possibly both. The scroll's texture is soft from years of use, the ink faded, but still legible in moonlight. You trace a finger along a passage discussing the 3 dream channels. Meridian pathways supposedly linking your liver to the soul's wanderings at night. Historians still argue whether these dream manuals were meant as genuine medical guides or just moral instruction disguised as pseudoscience. Either way, they're oddly comforting. Your eyes pause at a marginal note, your own, hastily scribbled last spring, try mugwort under pillow, combine adulteration silkworm cocoon dust. You never did. Mugwort, sure. It's practically the Vicks Vaporub of your time, but silkworm cocoon dust, that one gave you pause. There's always a fine line between medicine and very fancy lint. You remember a patient who swore by that concoction, a courtesan, always smelling faintly of musk and jasmine, who said the dreams it gave her were like full color plays she could control. One night she dreamed of flying over Hangzhou in a lacquered tub, pursued by bureaucrats waving teacups. She woke refreshed. The next night, she dreamed of her own funeral. She stopped using the dust after that. The scroll crackles slightly as you shift. Tucked in the back sleeve is something you forgot. An herbal mnemonic wheel, drawn in circles of red and black ink. It shows combinations like Scallion Fostragolis to long laughter and Foxglove Pla Bad Company, recurring nightmares. There's a fox doodle in the margin with angry eyebrows. That one's definitely yours. Alongside the dream guide is another Little Gems, a record of dosages written by your uncle, the first pharmacist in your family. His handwriting loops in tall, elegant lines. He believed dreams could be steered like a boat if only you ingested the correct wind. His favorites, dried lotus stamen and powdered pearl. The pearl he ground himself, muttering that cheap substitutes made you dream of accountancy. Pearl powder isn't cheap. You once traded half a jar for a single dose after a bad case of heart fire in the winter. The dream it gave you was oddly bureaucratic. You You spent the entire night filing permits in a library built from kelp. You slide the scroll closed, careful not to tear its edge. The cord you used to tie it is made from old fishing line, salvaged from a merchant who bartered it for throat lozenges made from dried frog skin. Yes, that's a real thing. And no, you don't keep it near your tea leaves. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once. Probably the same one that howled last month when you spilled foxglove tincture onto your sandals. The dream you had that night involved a singing duck and the emperor's mustache. It lingered for days. You stretch beneath the quilt, nudging aside a sachet that's fallen from the wall hook. This one contains lavender, wormwood, and a snippet of paper bearing a spell in seal script. You don't remember putting it together, but the spell seems familiar. Likely copied from that traveling monk with one eye. And 3 rules about snoring. You've noticed certain ingredients always creep into dream recipes. Lotus seeds, for instance, allegedly, anchor the soul. But too many, and you dream in loops. The worst are the endless market dreams, where you're always haggling and never buying. Then there's magnolia bark, said to induce calm. Once you accidentally combined it with fermented bean husk and dreamed of being trapped inside a giant dumpling. You were the pork. There's a corner in your scroll that talks about prophetic dreams. Very trendy. Some song officials even hired professional dream interpreters, especially before big exams or promotions. One famous scholar reportedly dreamed of a 3-legged crow walking in circles, then won a tax appointment in Hangzhou. Historians still argue whether this was divine omen or just a sign he needed less duck meat before bed. The dream book mentions clear dreams, ones where you know you're dreaming. Supposedly, if you train with a certain herb regimen, bitter gourd, winter cherry, and goji berry, you can gain awareness mid-dream. You tried once. Instead of lucidity, you dreamed you were a lucidity instructor, teaching other dreamers. They asked too many questions. You woke up exhausted. You look again at the diagrams, stars within stars, organs shaped like peaches, arrows showing dream energy rising through the lungs. It's baffling and beautiful. And behind the diagrams, in your own messy shorthand, a tiny scribble, need more dried oyster. A reminder, but also a mystery. For dreams, digestion, or general existence, you'll never know. The night is still dark, and the pillow cool beneath your cheek. You slide the scroll under your bed, safely tucked beside a pouch of dried wolfberry. Your mind floats gently now, neither fully awake nor fully dreaming, drifting on herbal clouds and soft murmurs from the street. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of your brain, a fox with angry eyebrows runs in circles, laughing. You wake with the peculiar certainty that someone has whispered a recipe into your ear. But of course, there's no one there. Just the muffled sound of slippers again, and the faint click of a teapot lid 3 courtyards away. You shift on your mat, turn toward the nightstand, and there it is. Your ginseng root still nestled inside its jade box. Well, not just any ginseng root. This one is absurdly anthropomorphic. Shaped like a tiny old man, with knobbed arms, bent knees, and what looks suspiciously like a little root, beard curling from its chin. You've had patients come in weeping with joy over less lifelike specimens. You're not sure if it's holy, haunted, or just hilariously shaped, but you've kept it sealed for over a year now. It was a gift from a traveling monk who claimed it screamed when uprooted. That was probably a joke. Probably. You gently open the box. The ginseng sits still, unchanged, dried to a golden tan. You've resisted selling it, even when Mrs. Yao offered her late husband's embroidered winter robe, even when that panicked merchant begged for it to cure spleen wind. Whatever that means, it's become your quiet talisman, your nightstand sentinel. Sometimes when the air is very still, you could swear it winks at you. You lean in, inspecting its ruddy face again. Still smug, still judging. Ginseng is no ordinary herb in your world. It's expensive, potent, and prone to counterfeiting. You once cracked open a ginseng Stick to find it was actually carrot soaked in vinegar and painted with ash. The vendor claimed it was a rare southern fire ginseng. You claimed indigestion and made your exit. Proper ginseng, like the little root man in your box, was thought to warm the body, support the ki, and sharpen the mind. The elite paid fortunes for it. It was dried, sliced, boiled, stewed with jujube fruit, or brewed into broths so bitter even tea wept. Song physicians praised its use in exhaustion and recovery, particularly from overthinking, which, frankly, is just called being alive now. You once read in a medical classic that ginseng could revive the 100 vessels, which sounded epic until you realized it meant improve circulation. Historians still argue whether that phrase was metaphorical or a poor understanding of blood flow. Either way, you like the drama of it. The jade box itself is a minor work of art, lined with rice paper stamped with your old teacher's seal, a curlicue that looks vaguely like a sleepy duck. The outer carving is simple, but inside the lid, you've tucked a paper charm, 1 part protection, 1 part superstition. It's faded now, but you remember writing it. You were sick at the time. Feverish. Maybe it worked. Beside the jade box sits your little pestle bowl, still dusty with traces of other roots. You've used it for licorice bark, dried hawthorn, even deer antler shavings. You'd never dare use it on your root man. He deserves better. He's never been ground, never been boiled, never been betrayed by pestle. You remember the day you received him. It was during a strange spring, heavy with yellow dust and rumors of civil disorder in the capital. The monk who handed you the box wore red sandals and carried nothing but a fan and a teacup. He didn't speak much. He just passed you the jade container and muttered something about dreams. Then he left. You never saw him again. You once dreamed the root came to life and brewed you soup. The soup had legs. You woke up hungry and unsettled. From time to time, you consider donating it to the local temple. But then again, you've seen how Brother Fang stores his holy relics. One was just a pine cone in a jar labeled ski testicle. You decide to keep it. Another night, another glance at your root, man. Your fingers brush against the silk it rests on, and you're struck again by how oddly precious this object feels. Not just for its medical value, but for the stories people have whispered around it. Ginseng that grants lucidity. Ginseng that calms ghosts. One patient claimed his wife stopped dreaming of her ex-husband after 1 dose. Coincidence? Probably. Still, she brought you dumplings afterward. The apothecary beneath your room creaks in the night wind. Bottles clink softly. A rat, a large one, possibly unionized, knocks over your licorice jar again. You sigh and make a mental note to store the roots higher. Maybe in the same cabinet where you keep the strictly theoretical poisons. You place the jade box back in its corner on the nightstand, turning it ever so slightly so the root's tiny face doesn't stare at you directly. It's easier to sleep that way. Then you roll over, pulling your quilt up to your chin. The night grows deeper, the lamp's warmth fading. But the ginseng remains, curled in its box, quiet, ancient, and maybe just a little too lifelike. One day you'll use it, maybe in an emergency, maybe in a final act of defiance, maybe never. For now, it waits. You wake with a familiar pressure in your abdomen. Not fear, not ghosts, just the humble, unavoidable tug of a full bladder. You sigh. This part of Song Dynasty life never makes it into the elegant scroll paintings. You swing your legs over the mat, careful not to knock over the little stool holding a jar of mung bean paste and your emergency tooth powder, and begin your slow shuffle toward the corner of the room where the chamber pot awaits. It's ceramic blue and white with a stylized crane painted across the lid. Yes, lid. You were taught early on that respectable pharmacists keep their chamber pots lidded, both for olfactory and symbolic reasons. A pot without a lid invites chaotic clay and possibly gossip. Once, a neighbor's apprentice left his uncovered, and the resulting odor was blamed for 3 days of poor tea sales on your street. You gingerly remove the lid, and do what needs doing, the sound echoing slightly in the silence. There's something weirdly ceremonial about it. You even bow your head for a moment after replacing the lid, half out of habit, half out of quiet apology to anyone downwind. Cleanliness, after all, is half your trade. You know what happens when bodily waste meets open herbal stock? Nothing good, and definitely nothing sellable. As you return to bed, your foot knocks something soft. Your nightcloth, used for quick cleanups, and the occasional herbal wrap. You bend down to retrieve it, and notice a scroll lying under your cot, dust covered, its ends curled. Not one of your standard medical texts, but an old family guide to domestic virtue, which includes a section on nocturnal etiquette. One line stands out: "A wise man lifts the lid with humility." A phrase you've never quite understood, yet repeated quietly each time nature calls. Historians still argue whether chamber pots with lids were truly a Song invention or borrowed from earlier Tang customs. Regardless, in your household, the lid is sacred. You once had a short-lived apprentice who forgot this rule. After the second offense, you assigned him to scrub ox bile jars for a week. He never forgot again. Your own pot is scrubbed regularly with a mix of bamboo ash and rice vinegar. You also sprinkle a few star anise into the base, not for sanitation, but because you once read in a fringe alchemical pamphlet that star anise frightens away urine sprites. You don't believe in urine sprites, but you also don't not believe in them. You've had some weird spills. As you settle back under the quilt, your thoughts drift to that one particularly uncomfortable consultation last winter. A scholar had arrived in great distress, suffering from fear of night moisture. You asked whether this meant sweat, incontinence, or dreams involving waterfalls. He wept quietly and asked if you could make a potion that would seal his body like a wine jar. You brewed something with lotus seed, astragalus, and hawthorn, but truthfully, he seemed more soothed by the act of being listened to. The human bladder, you've concluded, is as much psychological as it is physiological. Beside the chamber pot stands your water jar. Its lid is also carefully maintained, though this one's adorned with a lotus motif. You take a small sip of the cool water, enough to wet your throat, but not wake your kidneys. Too much water at night, and you'll be back here again before sunrise. You notice your breath puffing faintly in the air, cooler than expected. Autumn must be creeping in through the window cracks. You tug the quilt tighter and wonder, briefly, how long you can keep pretending the night breezes are invigorating rather than simply cold. Somewhere outside, a bamboo wind chime clatters. You imagine a passing spirit pausing mid-flight, wrinkling its ghostly nose and thinking, he remembered the lid this time. You chuckle quietly at the thought, then wince as your toe grazes the still, cold floor. Not everything in song medicine is elegant scrollwork and ginseng lore. Some of it is about dignity in the face of very human needs. One final glance toward the chamber pot. The crane on the lid seems to nod sagely in the dim light. You decide to take it as encouragement. And then, finally, you sleep again. Your next stirring is brought on not by bladder pressure or celestial dreams, but by a very faint rattling sound. Wood on wood, bamboo against bamboo. You open one eye. The sound is coming from your nightstand's lower drawer, the one with the latch that doesn't quite close. A tiny vibration, a muted shuffle. Likely just the bamboo tubes again. Beetle shells, mostly, and maybe the dried lizard skin that keeps shifting every time you open the window too fast. You sigh. Not ghosts. Just old remedies jostling in their containers. Like anxious students in an exam hall, you reach down and pull open the drawer, peering into its slightly musty depths. Inside are 5 narrow tubes, once part of a child's counting toy, now repurposed to hold your more questionable ingredients. Things that don't belong in polite recipes, yet refuse to be thrown out. A fragment of snake scale, 2 cockroach wings, beetle shells crushed and whole. And yes, a pinch of something that may have been frog spine, though you no longer remember who labeled it. These are not your everyday curatives. These are your crumbly charms. You open one tube and tip it into your palm. A soft clatter of beetle fragments, iridescent, dry, oddly beautiful in the lamplight. In some corners of herbal tradition, ground beetle is said to unlock the inner wind and treat phlegm that refuses to descend. You've tried it on precisely one patient, who then coughed out what appeared to be a marble-sized lozenge of regret and mucus. He said he felt better. He also never came back. Historians still argue whether these insect-based remedies were symbolic, spiritual, or simply the desperate guesses of very tired pharmacists. But some were codified in song medical texts. 10 beetle preparation for lungs, being the most famous, though least appetizing. You remember reading that one aloud once, during an herbalist's symposium in Loyang. Half the room laughed. The other half furiously took notes. You're not sure which group worried you more. Next to the beetle tube is a wrapped bundle of dried gecko skin. Flat, slightly translucent, and brittle as old parchment. In certain Taoist treatments, this was considered a warming agent, used to treat cold lungs, lethargic limbs, or as one text mysteriously described, wandering soul feet. You've never seen such a case. You hope never to. You tap the skin gently back into its pouch and notice that the label has begun to peel. Beneath it is another older label. Wand Stopper. Interesting. You make a mental note to cross-reference that one with the materia medica. Or at least ask your neighbor's grandmother, who swears she was cured of ankle insomnia by drinking frog broth under a full moon. She may know something. Another tube reveals a surprise, the remnants of powdered wasp nest. Oh, you had forgotten that one. This was from the time you tried to replicate a wart treatment, described by a wandering apothecary who had 6 fingers on one hand and a suspiciously detailed knowledge of fungal infections. The nest powder didn't work. It also made your kitchen smell like burning bread. Still, you keep it, out of respect for effort. Out of the belief that knowledge, even failed knowledge, deserves a little bamboo cylinder to call home. You begin sorting them again, gently. It's not about usage anymore. It's ritual, a kind of bedtime routine that only makes sense if you've spent your life cataloging substances most people would scream to find under their pillow. Your fingers brush against a pouch you haven't opened in years. Inside is something flat, dark and papery. Cicada shell. Harvested in spring, dried carefully, and then, for reasons you can no longer recall, painted with gold leaf on one edge. You hold it up to the lamplight. It looks like a miniature shield, supposedly good for throat inflammation, possibly nightmares, maybe both. You let it rest back into its pouch like a tiny knight retiring from battle. And then there's the last item in the drawer, a wooden token with a crude carving of a bat. It's not a remedy, just a charm. You carved it yourself after a particularly stressful festival season, when your shop was swamped with hungover poets looking for clarity pills. You laughed, gave them licorice and water, and swore never to work past the midnight bell again. The bat charm helped. Or at least, it made you smile. You keep it near the beetle shells, perhaps so they can chat. As you slide the drawer shut, the tubes rattle once more, soft and familiar. You imagine them whispering herbal gossip to one another? Did you hear who got used in a tea blend last week? Don't tell the cicada shell, but she's expired. You smile and lie back down. The night has taken on that muffled, underwater stillness that only happens when the wind dies down and the house settles. Your breath slows. The lid on the chamber pot stays respectfully closed, and beneath your nightstand, beetles, lizards, and crumbs of old magic slumber in their bamboo tubes, waiting for a day when someone might need them again. Or, at the very least, remember them fondly. You wake with the creeping sensation that something isn't where it should be. Not the inkstone, still there. Not the jade box, intact. The scrolls haven't toppled. Your gaze drifts to the open shelf, just above your head, where you keep rarer items wrapped in labeled cloth, and you notice the gap. The ox gallstone is missing. Your body stills. Your breath hitches. That's not just some pebble. That stone, dried, glossy, irregular, is a treasured pharmaceutical marvel. A new huang, to be precise, once nestled in the bile duct of a very unfortunate ox. It's used in the treatment of convulsions, fevers, delirium, sometimes ground into powder and combined with musk to create clearing the palace pills. Prescribed for patients seeing things that aren't there. The price of one gallstone could rival a silk merchant's annual income. You've kept yours for 3 years. Bought from a dubious trader who claimed it came from an ox that died during a lightning storm. You suspected nonsense. But the color was right, a deep golden brown with marbled streaks. You tested a sliver on your tongue once, just to be sure. It tasted bitter, earthy, and disturbingly like regret. And now, it's gone. You sit up fast enough to jostle the inkstone, almost knocking your water jar. Your brain cycles through possibilities. Theft, misplacement. You've had break-ins before, though none who targeted gallstones specifically. You once had a thief steal your winter slippers and leave a peach. But this, you get up and begin searching. Not under the cot, not in the strictly poisons drawer, not among the dried plum pits. Could it have rolled off the shelf during the night? You lower yourself to the floor, cheek against cold tile, peering into the shadow beneath your writing stool. Nothing. Just a dust bunny that might be part gecko. You mutter a quiet oath, not vulgar, just disappointed. Sky intestines preserve me. You begin questioning your memory. Did you move it recently? Use it in a formula. You remember preparing a calming draft for that young scholar who couldn't stop reciting poems in his sleep. You definitely used powdered pearl, maybe a speck of musk. No gallstone. At least you're 90% sure. You start opening jars, one by one. Licorice. Wrong smell. Cinnamon bark. Too innocent. A half-used packet of deer musk. Questionable but not stone. Like, you hesitate before opening your forbidden experiments box. It contains a desiccated leech, a tooth with a faint script on it, and a dried fig that was once mistaken for a spleen. No gallstone. You pause. What if someone took it? Your mind jumps to suspects. The retired opera singer with that twitch. The boy who came for fire cupping but lingered by the shelf too long. The herb peddler who always smells faintly of goose. Could they have lifted it? Would they even know its value? You doubt it. Most customers ask for love potions or anti-baldness tea, not bile-derived brain medicine. You sit down and rub your temples. The lamp sputters beside you. Maybe it's time to accept the most likely truth: you misplaced it. That, or the stone decided to leave. You've heard fringe beliefs suggesting that particularly potent new huang can return to the spirit world. If unneeded, you'd laughed when you read that. Now well, maybe not so funny. Historians still argue whether ox gallstones were truly effective or simply revered due to rarity. Some claim the original new huang in ancient texts referred to bezoars, not bile stones. Others think it was all metaphor, a poetic stand in for purity under pressure. You lean toward the practical interpretation, rare, valuable, and hard to find in polite conversation. You reach again for your nightstand. In the back of the top drawer, you keep a scrap of yellow paper, your emergency apology charm, meant to soothe the angry ancestors, gods, or patients when something goes truly sideways. You consider burning it, not out of fear, but out of a strange, bureaucratic instinct to file this incident spiritually. And then you pause. You look over at the cracked teacup on the stool, the one you used 2 nights ago, brewing a calming infusion. You lift it. There, stuck to the inside with a little dried honey, the gallstone, half dissolved. You stare at it in horror. You must have added it absent-mindedly while preparing the infusion. You used it for a blend you sent home with that widow who thinks her cat is haunted. Your mouth opens. No sound comes out. You have no backup, no reserve supply. The only other gallstone in the region belongs to a cranky tea master who guards it like a sacred peach pit. You lean back, dazed. Your precious stone, steeped into an herbal broth, and likely being sipped by a woman who thinks demons live in her pantry. You laugh, quietly but deeply. There's a lesson in this. Something about ego, material attachments, or just labeling things better. You wipe your face, put the teacup back down, and glance at the inkstone. Still dry, still judging. Tomorrow, you'll write a new inventory. But tonight, you'll dream of an ox, wide-eyed, dignified, and just a little disappointed. The wind has picked up. You hear it weaving through the courtyard bamboo, rustling like silk across stone. The lamp on your nightstand flickers gently, casting long shadows over your scattered scrolls. You sit up, groggy, throat dry, and reach to adjust the wick. It's a dance you know well, too low, and the flame chokes too high, and it smokes like a grudge-bearing ancestor. You get it just right. Steady light, soft glow, minimal soot. You've learned the hard way that soot angers spirits. Specifically, kitchen spirits. According to one of your older teachers, if soot from your night lamp drifts toward the cooking area, the household spirits feel disrespected. They interpret it as you smoking inside their divine break room. One unlucky night years ago, you ignored this wisdom. Your rice burned for 3 days straight and your fish sauce turned sour without warning. Coincidence? Maybe. But you've been careful with the wick ever since. Tonight's lamp is filled with sesame oil, faintly nutty warm. The wick is cotton, trimmed by hand. No frayed edges. You pride yourself on this setup. It's not fancy, but it's efficient. Reliable light is a luxury in a world of sudden gusts and curious mice. You lift the lamp carefully to peer behind it. There, tucked between the wooden slats of the wall, are your ghost treaties. Technically, they're spirit appeasement charms, but ghost treaty sounds cooler and fits better in the margins of your dream scrolls. Each treaty is a small square of mulberry paper, inked with looping characters and bound with a thread dipped in red ochre. You replace them monthly, especially during Hungry Ghost Festival season. A few years ago, you skipped one. That was the summer your apprentice got inexplicably stuck in the pantry for 5 hours. The door wasn't locked. The treaties say things like, peace at threshold, and light in the smoke. One just has a drawing of a spoon, which you were later told was supposed to be a moon. Your brush technique was ambitious that day. Historians still argue whether Song-era pharmacists truly believed in household spirits or simply catered to their patients' superstitions. But you've seen too many odd things to dismiss them outright. The sound of sandals where no one's walking. A spoon clattering off a shelf seconds before you reach for it. Once, your ginseng root hummed. Just a note like a tuning fork made of plant matter. Your kitchen gods have their own shrine. A small alcove above your stove, adorned with burnt offerings, rice wine, dried tangerine peel, and a single fish bone. You light incense for them once a week. Sometimes more if your digestion's been particularly smooth. But it's the night spirits you worry about now. You place your hand near the lamp, feeling the heat. The air smells faintly of sandalwood from the stick you lit earlier, its ash curling into lazy spirals. The shadows on the wall ripple gently, and for a moment, one of them seems to bow. Just the lamp dancing, you tell yourself. You glance across the room to the window, where the paper screen is fluttering softly. You remember what a traveling herbalist once told you in a whisper. Never let moonlight fall across your face while sleeping. That's when the forgotten ones see you, he said, eyes wide. And if they see you once, they never forget. You haven't slept directly under moonlight since. Tonight, the screen is firmly latched, the moonlight diffused. Safe. Still, you mutter a few words under your breath. An old protection charm passed down from your grandmother, involving tigers, ink, and oddly, apricots. You're not sure she ever understood what it meant, but it's always helped you sleep. The lamp's glow has mellowed now, cozy and even. You settle back down on your mat, glancing once more at the treaties. The spoon, the moon, is still there. Peaceful. You wonder if anyone else in the neighborhood keeps ghost treaties. Probably not the tea master. He says things like, "Fear is a choice," and then jumps at geckos. But maybe the midwife 3 doors down. She's always mumbling to the doorframe before entering. Or old Zhang, the pickled tofu vendor who never walks home the same way twice. You make a mental note to ask. Quietly, over tea. You lie back, letting the flickering light lull your eyes closed. Your mind floats toward half-formed memories of your first suit, smeared dream journal, of the time you tried to brew demon bee. Gone. Tea and ended up with something that melted your cup, of the spirit medium who warned you never to mix lamp oil brands. You use only one kind now. The flame dips, dances, straightens. Outside, the wind rises again. Something wooden clacks in the distance. Perhaps another ghost passing by. Perhaps just the laundry poles. The treaties stay still. The suit stays minimal. The kitchen spirits, for now, are at peace. The hour grows thick. That woolly part of the night when dreams are half-formed and the world hovers between breaths. But of course, sleep doesn't come. Not when the bell over your front gate jingles softly, and a familiar voice calls up from the courtyard. It's Auntie Lynn. She's here again. You groan quietly and reach for your overrobe. Auntie Lynn is 70 if she's a day, sprightly as a squirrel, and utterly convinced that your shop is her personal herbal concierge, especially for, how shall we say, revitalization needs. You shuffle to the stairs and lean over the railing. "Auntie," you whisper. "It's the middle of the night." I know," she says, already halfway up the stairs. "But the moon's rising, and you said tiger bone works better on a waxing moon?" You did say that once. As a joke, she took it as gospel. You step aside to let her in. She's wrapped in 3 shawls, smelling faintly of camphor and smoked eel. Her eyes sparkle with the enthusiasm of someone about to request something extremely unorthodox. "I need another batch," she announces. That cordial. The one with the deer tail and the, what was it? Bleach powder. You rub your temples. "Auntie, that's not even a real formula. That was something I cobbled together to keep Mr. Gao awake during opera season." "Well, it worked on me," she beams. You sigh and motion her toward the stool. You light the lamp a bit higher, the ghost treaties fluttering softly in the warm updraft. Time to prepare another aphrodisiac. The base is always wine. Rice wine, aged. Auntie brought her own. You uncork it. It smells potent, with a floral edge you can't place. Probably plum blossoms or disappointment. Then you rummage through your dubious, but in demand, shelf dried tiger bones. Fake, of course. Real tiger bone is banned, endangered, and mostly legend. A pinch of safflower, a few drops of ginseng tincture, and that tiny satchel labeled, "For confidence." You glance at her. "How strong do you want it?" She winks. "I have mahjong tomorrow. I want to terrify them." "Right. Strong, then." You pour the wine into a small clay pot, stirring in the powder with the end of a cinnamon stick. The scent becomes earthy, musky, a little illegal smelling. Not dangerous, just persistent. As you stir, she tells you about her neighbor's new apprentice. "Too handsome," she says. "Makes everyone nervous. I think he's a fox spirit." You nod absently. "Could be. You've seen stranger things." Once, during festival week, a man brought in a complaint of sudden muscle spasms, claimed a courtesan, bewitched his spleen. You prescribed hawthorn and celosia seeds. He was cured, though the courtesan later dropped off a fruit basket with a note. "You're no fun." You bottle the cordial and hand it over. Auntie Lynn wraps it carefully in cloth, then pauses, looking conspiratorial. "You don't think I'm too old, do you?" You meet her eyes. "I think the day you're too old is the day tea stops steaming. So, not soon." She smiles and pats your cheek. "That's why I keep coming back to you." She leaves as suddenly as she arrived, trailing shawls and purpose. You close the door, leaning against it for a moment. The room still smells like deer musk and ambition. You return to your bed, legs heavy, brain humming with the absurdity of it all. Historians still argue whether aphrodisiacs in Song-era pharmacology were genuine medicinal attempts or cleverly disguised morale boosters. Some scrolls suggest a mix of philosophy and placebo. Others list ingredients like ox knee, rhinoceros horn, or essence of thunder, which may or may not have been a poetic way of saying, don't ask. You've made dozens of these formulas. Some sincere, some satirical. You once mixed a love potion using only ingredients with the character for heart in their names. It smelled like overcooked beans and got your apprentice hiccuping for 2 days. No complaints from the recipient, though. You glance at the empty bottle Auntie Lynn left behind from last time. The cork is half chewed. You decide not to ask. Outside, the moon is indeed waxing. You see its curved light through the screen, a pale hook hanging in the sky. You wonder whether it really does affect medicine, or if that's just the kind of excuse people need to chase a little joy. You think of Auntie Lynn walking home in the dark, her bundle clinking faintly. Not a warrior, not a scholar, just a widow who refuses to fade quietly. She's not alone. You've seen it before. Men seeking long, lost vigor. Women hoping to wilt after hard winters. The elderly looking for one more thrill. You smile. Then you blow out the lamp and pull the quilt to your chin. In the stillness, a faint voice echoes from the courtyard. Don't forget. Next week, I want something for hair growth. You roll your eyes, then chuckle. Of course you'll make it. You already have a recipe in mind. By now, the moon has shifted its angle in the sky, throwing a beam of light across your floorboards like a painter testing strokes on rice paper. You blink slowly, only halfway conscious, but your body knows the ritual. You reach again for the brush. Your inkstone waits on the nightstand, still slightly damp from earlier use. The suit has settled, a thin black puddle waiting to be stirred. You add a few drops of water from your gourd bottle, enough to loosen the residue without diluting it into uselessness. The brush is soft, tipped, made from goat hair, the shaft slightly chewed, possibly by your own anxious teeth, possibly by the rat with a taste for licorice. Either way, it still works. You roll the brush across the stone and begin to write. It's not poetry, though the rhythm might fool someone peeking over your shoulder. It's a recipe, your own invention. One of dozens scattered through half-used scrolls and the margins of old invoices. Draught for eye ghosts. That's what you've titled this one. It's a condition your patients whisper about. Never wanting to say aloud. The sense of being watched while alone. Of flickers in the corner of the eye. Of shapes just outside the lamp's reach. Official texts call it visual misapprehension due to spleen dampness. You call it what it is, eye ghosts. You write carefully. Steep 1 part dried chrysanthemum, 1 part lycium berry, and a trace of powdered oyster shell. Add tincture of barley sprout, and a breath of frankincense. You hesitate, then add optional 1 drop of sesame oil blessed under moonlight. Why not? These recipes are part medicine, part poetry, and part very sleepy brainstorming. Your characters tilt slightly to the left. That always happens when you're tired. You steady the brush by bracing your elbow against the nightstand. You remember one late-night patient who came in muttering about a face in the ink of her scrolls. You gave her a tonic of mulberry bark and buffalo horn. She said it worked, though she started wearing a silk blindfold at night after that. You jot a few symbols in the corner. Part alchemical shorthand, part joke a tiny eye, a crescent moon, and a shrimp. The shrimp is purely for your own amusement. Historians still argue whether recipes like yours were meant to be real treatments or spiritual protections disguised as medical notes. The truth is probably both. Medicine in your world often walks with ghosts. You switch to a second sheet and start a new entry. Soothing powder for clouded breath. Another vague ailment, usually describing a kind of lingering chest tightness or the subtle panic that creeps in around dusk. You list ingredients: fermented plum, mint leaf, powdered bamboo resin. You pause. Something's missing. You lean back, glancing at the little drawer under the nightstand. Inside are two oddly shaped seeds from a merchant in Chengdu. You've never used them. They're said to scatter internal fog. Tonight feels like their time. You crush one gently between two coins, fold the dust into a paper packet, and make a note. Add to next draft. Taste may resemble regret. The lamp's flame sputters again. You pause to trim the wick with your fingernail, then return to writing. Some of your notes trail off mid-sentence. That's normal. Sleep always arrives mid-stroke. You once woke to find your brush had traced a perfectly straight line down the page, as if your arm had slowly collapsed under the weight of exhaustion. You flip to another sheet, one you've filled with half-formed thoughts and maybes. A section titled, "For Those Who Dream of Drowning," catches your eye. You'd begun it months ago, after hearing 3 unrelated patients describe the same dream. Deep water, heavy limbs, no voice. You hadn't believed them at first. Then it happened to you. You still remember the weight of the water in your dream, how it pressed against your chest, even after you woke. You've been collecting ingredients ever since, trying to name the fear in a formula. Poria? You're right. Peppermint. Crushed clove. Lotus leaf ash? You underline ash twice. You reach for a small stone seal and stamp the page with your personal mark. A fox curling around a herb bundle. You press gently. The red cinnabar ink bleeds a little at the edges, giving the fox a slightly blurry look. That feels appropriate. The lamp flickers low. You put down the brush and blow gently across the inkstone, drying the last characters. Your eyes ache, but in a good way, like they've watched something useful. You tuck the scrolls into their cloth sleeve and place them back under the nightstand. The room smells of ink, oil, and faint mint. Outside, an owl hoots. Somewhere, a dog barks. You lie back. The lamp dims. The brush rests, and the eye ghosts, if they're watching, have nothing left to see tonight. The quiet is never absolute in your neighborhood. Thin paper walls carry more than just the breeze. They carry coughs, gossip, and tonight, the distinct sound of someone 3 houses down shouting about boils. You roll over, sighing. Boils again. That household has become your most unwilling patrons. At least once a month, someone from their side of the alley develops some angry, swollen cluster of heat. On the neck, on the thigh, once even on an ear. It's always urgent, always blamed on unclean air or malicious vapors, and always treated with a loud argument across the street before anyone comes to see you. You sit up and begin sorting ingredients on your nightstand. You've prepped for this. A small box labeled emergency inflammation contains everything you need: yellow dock root, calamus, rhubarb shavings, and your secret weapon, dried crushed mung bean soaked in vinegar. It smells like regret, but it works. You gather a fresh cloth and start assembling the salve on your low writing stool, using the flat edge of a sandalwood comb to mix the paste. It spreads thick, green, and pungent. You hear footsteps on gravel, then a knock, tentative, polite yet absolutely expectant. You don't open the door. Instead, you whisper, "Bulls." A meek voice replies, "Two," on his back. One we think is breathing, right? Demon boils. You unlatch the door just enough to pass through a small jar, already labeled with a leaf-wrapped warning, apply only during the waxing moon. Avoid direct eye contact with the swelling. It's mostly to discourage poking. Tell him to avoid salted fish and no more steamed buns for a week. A pause. Then the voice says, "He said he hasn't eaten either." You squint into the night. Tell him to stop lying. They shuffle away. You close the door and return to your mat, muttering to yourself. Demon boils. It's not that you don't believe in metaphysical ailments. It's just that they always seem to show up right after street festivals and too much sweet bean paste. Your grandmother used to say that evil likes sugar. You're starting to think she wasn't joking. Back on the mat, you stare at the ceiling. The rafters creak. You can hear water dripping into a neighbor's basin. The scent of your boil salve still lingers on your fingers, a mix of herbs and faint vinegar sharpness. You think of the time one of the boil-prone neighbors claimed he saw smoke come from a lump before it burst. It moaned. He insisted. You gave him something calming, and he took 3 doses before admitting the lump was just near his ear, and he'd measured the wind. Historians still argue whether such complaints were rooted in early understandings of infection, or if the supernatural framing was used as a psychological balm. Certainly, the song texts acknowledge both. The treatise on external swellings often pairs salves with charms, sometimes suggesting chants like, "Calm the red mountain," while applying ointment. You once tried one of those chants on a child with a forehead pustule. He laughed so hard the boil popped from sheer glee. The mother swore it was a miracle. You just wiped your hands on your apron and went back to measuring mung beans. Tonight's salve will work. Your formula is reliable, tested, even boring. But the neighbors never seem reassured until you mention a spirit. So you'll say it again tomorrow, in your most solemn voice. The demon has been pacified. Then watch them all nod, as if they hadn't eaten 5 sticky rice cakes last night. You reach for your night water and take a slow sip. The moon outside is higher now, and for the first time tonight, you feel its pull. You lie back, eyes open, waiting for dreams, but instead you hear whispers through the paper wall. The neighbor's children, talking about the boils. One claims they saw it blink. Another insists it hissed. You smile? They'll be fine. You close your eyes, fingers still tingling from the vinegar. The salve dries quickly. It always does. You hope they apply it correctly. Last time, they tried heating it over a fire. Not your instruction. Not smart. Still, you drift eventually with the scent of rhubarb lingering in the air and a quiet sense of satisfaction that once again, at least for tonight, you've soothed someone's flesh and fears. The dreams this time are citrusy. You're standing in a field of orange trees, each one bearing strange, oversized peels. Not fruit, just curls and spirals of dried rind hanging like festive ribbons. Someone nearby is weighing them, frowning, muttering numbers that make no sense. You reach out to help, but the scale keeps tilting toward absurdity. 10 grams, then 3 cats, then the weight of a sigh. You wake with a start. Your blanket's half off, your fingers are curled as if grasping invisible tweezers, and your scale, your real one, made of bone and brass, is lying sideways on the mat beside you. That's not great. You must have kicked it in your sleep. You pick it up and set it back on the nightstand, nudging aside a small porcelain dish filled with dried tangerine peel.
Ah, yes.
The inspiration behind your absurd citrus dream. Dried chempli or aged tangerine peel is your go-to measuring trick. Technically, you have a full apothecary balance scale downstairs with little metal weights shaped like tortoises. But at night, when precision gives way to drowsy practicality, you use chempli. 1 strip equals roughly 1.5 grams. 2 equals a gentle pinch. 3 is, you're serious now. You learned this from your old teacher who once declared, if it smells like a memory, it's half a gram too much. He wasn't exactly methodical, but he was rarely wrong. You reach for the peel now, snapping one piece between your fingers. The scent is sharp and comforting, like childhood summers and medicine that didn't taste terrible. You chew on a corner, thoughtfully. Bitter, floral, faintly sweet. You once tried it as a lozenge during festival season and found yourself followed by bees. Still worth it. On your nightstand, you keep a small pouch labeled Midnight Ratios. Inside, tangerine peel strips of varying sizes, each annotated in tiny brushwork. Sliver to low, grade fever. Curl to moodiness plus sore knees. Full moon to constipation or spiritual blockage, thus unclear. Historians still argue whether song pharmacists used food items to measure dosage, or if this was a folk workaround born from necessity. Most scrolls advocate proper weights, but buried in the commentaries are whispers of peach pit calibration and ginger, root gouging. You've tried all of them. Chempy works best. Easy to dry, easy to store, and nobody minds if it accidentally ends up in a soup. Once, a patient complained that her sedative blend smelled too festive. You traced the scent to an overly generous peel portion. She still drank it and reported vivid dreams involving a mandarin duck and a tax collector with a lisp. Tonight you prepare a small night draft for yourself. Just a mild blend poria for restfulness, lily bulb for calm, a sliver of chempui to balance the spleen's rhythm. You stir the powders with warm water in your chipped ceramic cup. No measuring spoons, just your fingers, your instinct, and one precisely curled peel strip. As it steeps, you glance at your ledger. You've started tracking peel to patient ratios. It's not science yet, but it's close. Your notes say Auntie Lynn responds best to 2 peels and a hint of anise. The scholar with recurring dream insomnia. Half a peel and an oath to stop reading sushi before bed. You once tried to standardize everything. Brass weights. Parchment charts. But life, like medicine, is often uncooperative. Scales rust. Ink fades. But tangerine peel endures. You sip your draft. The warmth slides down your throat with a comforting bitterness. Your chest loosens. The corners of your mouth twitch into a sleepy smile. Outside, a breeze rises. The wind chimes tinkle. You hear someone sneeze in the alley. You chuckle. Someone else using chempy tonight, perhaps. Back under the quilt, your fingers find a stray piece of peel beneath your pillow. How did it get there? Doesn't matter. You leave it. Let the dreams tonight be slightly tangy, slightly bitter, and perfectly dosed. You drift off, scale rebalanced, cup emptied, and the faint aroma of dried citrus trailing behind you like a scent, marked lullaby. Too, your breath is slow, your limbs heavy, but your eyes snap open anyway. It's not a noise that wakes you. It's a feeling, like someone has opened a book you swore you'd hidden well. You turn your head toward the upper shelf behind the nightstand, where a dull, faintly glimmering edge peeks from behind a bundle of licorice root. No, couldn't be. You sit up slowly, careful not to knock over the tea bowl you've balanced dangerously on an inkstone. You reach with 2 fingers and ease the scroll into view. It's still there, intact. Slightly warm, strangely. The Forbidden Book. Its real title is something too long and poetic to remember at this hour. The sealed instructions for the harmonization of internal metals with the breath of heavenly fire. You just call it the book you're not supposed to have. It's banned in most reputable circles, passed under tables in hushed voices, and wrapped in silk so read it looks like a warning. You didn't steal it. You inherited it from a colleague who disappeared into his own furnace, as the story goes. You're not sure whether that was literal or metaphorical. The scroll was inside a wooden box marked with a suit, drawn character that translates roughly to do not. Naturally, you opened it. Inside alchemical diagrams, ingredient lists that start reasonably, cinnamon bark, fermented wheat, but quickly become alarming mercury beads. Bat spleen tincture, crushed cinnabar infused with ox blood. The recipes seem to oscillate between genuine insomnia treatments and half mad schemes to dissolve the soul into light. You've only tried one formula, a mild one, to calm the 100 veins and invite lucid breaths. It used lotus seed, black sesame, and something called sun dried nightshade. You substituted basil. The results were vivid. That night you dreamt of a staircase carved from bone, spiraling downward into a chamber where your childhood friends sat cross-legged, chanting herbal dosages backwards. When you woke, your tongue tasted of sandalwood. The effect lasted 3 days. You decided not to try again. Still, you kept the scroll. Historians still argue whether these alchemical texts were ever meant to be practical, or whether they served as metaphors for internal transformation. The prevailing scholarly opinion is probably both. That, or no idea, but it's spicy reading. You unroll a section now, eyes scanning symbols that seem to shift in the lamplight. There's one formula circled in charcoal, likely by its last owner. It's titled, "To Balance the Inner Dust." Ingredients include pearl ash, pine soot, and the breath of someone who no longer dreams. Not an easy component to source. You reach the part you avoid. The teeth rituals. It includes a diagram of a molar wrapped in thread, dipped in vinegar, then buried beneath a plum tree during an eclipse. You've never understood it. You're not sure anyone did. But something about it always makes your gums ache. You consider hiding the scroll again, this time somewhere less obvious. But a nagging curiosity flares. What if there's something useful you've missed? Some real insight behind the flourishes and fire. You flip to a page with instructions for distilling the echo of silence. It reads more like poetry than procedure. At the moment when thought ceases and only breath remains, heat the mercury to the point of forgetfulness. Listen. Write nothing. Drink everything. Right? You reread a marginal note written in shaky brush. Tried this. Saw my father? He apologized. You roll the scroll back up slower now, gentler. It's not something you want to use, not unless you're desperate. But in a world where tangerine peel is a unit of measure, and dreams come with side effects, maybe keeping one forbidden scroll isn't such a terrible thing. You tuck it back behind the licorice bundle. Its silk wrapping now, warm in your hands. You whisper, not a prayer exactly, more a soft contract. Stay quiet, stay still. And the scroll does. You settle once more onto your mat. But this time, your dreams are sharper. Just behind the closed lids, diagrams form. A tiger's fang floating in ink. A tongue dipped in gold. A formula that writes itself backward across your thoughts. You breathe deeply. Try to think of tangerines. But somewhere deep in the quiet of your room, the forbidden scroll hums ever so faintly. And though you won't admit it in daylight, you sleep a little closer to the wall tonight. The quiet hum of sleep has only just returned when something sharp interrupts it. Not a dream, not a ghost, but a bite. You bolt upright, swatting instinctively at your leg. There's nothing there now, but you know that sting. Lice again. You groan, pushing back the quilt. It's always during the cooler months. They wait until you're just warm enough to stop fidgeting, and then they strike. You scratch absently as your foot brushes something soft and warm along the edge of the mat. The cat. Not yours. Just the cat. The courtyard stray with one eye, a notch in his ear, and a meow like a broken flute. He comes in through the ceiling rafters or the half-opened vent. No one knows how, and no one really tries to stop him. Tonight he's curled near your basket of herbal bandages, purring loudly, body twitching in a dream of heroic rodent conquests. You lean over and check his paws, sticky with something. Probably licorice sap. He's stepped in everything at some point, and he has never once actually caught a mouse. You get up and relight the lamp. First order of business: vinegar rinse. You unseal a small jar under the nightstand labeled "Do Not Drink," a special blend of rice vinegar, mint, and something vaguely sulfurous. It stinks like boiled remorse, but it kills lice and repels most insects. You dab it along your calves with a rag. Watching the cat eye you suspiciously. The cat sneezes. You glare at him. He sneezes again. It occurs to you that the mice may have returned. You've noticed missing plum pits, a torn paper sachet, and now the cat is too comfortable to be doing his job. You lean over the edge of the mat and listen. There. Faint rustling between the floorboards near the stairs. Tiny, confident chewing. Brazen for this hour. You recall the last time you had a serious mouse problem, 6 months ago, when you discovered they'd nested inside your shipment of dried Cotinopsis. They made tiny, scented hammocks from your best mulberry paper. You had to burn the entire batch. This time, you'll act sooner. You gather a few bits of dried bay leaf, a smear of citron paste, and 3 flakes of camphor from the jar labeled nose openers. You tie them into a tiny linen bundle and place it near the suspected mouse path. It's not poison, just unpleasant. You've always preferred repellents to traps. Mice scream when they die, and that wakes the ghosts. Historians still argue whether song era pharmacists were expected to double as rodent managers. There's no official mention in the treatises, but plenty of scroll margins include notes like, "Do not store licorice near floor. Mice love it," or, famously, "If mouse eats deer velvet, bill client anyway." Back in bed, the vinegar cooling on your skin, you scratch again, reflexively this time. You'll need to boil your under robe tomorrow. Maybe wash your bedding in lotus leaf tea. That worked once. Maybe. The cat sneezes a third time, then lifts his head and stares at you as if to say, "You're lice, not mine." You toss a pillow at him. He doesn't move. Then you hear it again. Tap, tap. Rustle. The mice are throwing a party now. Possibly a revolution. You sigh and reach under the nightstand for your emergency pouch of floor beast deterrent. It's mostly citrus peel, garlic skin, and a few sacred tea leaves you're pretty sure expired spiritually years ago. You scatter it near the mat edge, muttering an old house rhyme. "No whiskers where I sleep, no scratching where I dream. Take your paws and leave me deep." You pause. Did the cat just chuckle? You glance his way. He's twitching again. Dreaming, perhaps, of catching a mouse and being awarded a title. Mouse Marshal of the Rooftop Realm. He'd demand extra eel for breakfast. You lie back, finally. The vinegar fades. The rustling quiets. Either they've taken the hint or paused to consult their mouse shaman. The cat begins to snore softly. And your leg itches just a little less. You drift again, though now the dreams are mechanical. Inkstones grinding themselves. Brushes writing midair. Cats filing tax documents. You wake with your cheek pressed to the cool wood of your writing board, and the vague sense you've lost a tooth. You run your tongue across your teeth. Nope. Still there. But your mouth tastes of metal, and your lips feel dry, sticky, oddly reflective. You sit up, grab the tiny bronze mirror from your nightstand, and hold it near the lamp. Then you see it. Your tongue is tinged faintly silver. Again. Mercury lozenges, of course. You reach for the ceramic jar tucked behind your lamp, where you keep your more unusual remedies. The lid is off. One lozenge missing. You vaguely remember sucking on one in the early evening, thinking it might ease the phantom toothache you'd imagined into existence. It helped. A bit too much. Mercury in micro doses was a trick you learned from a wild-eyed alchemist who traded formulas for dried scallop powder and riddles. He claimed a pellet of quicksilver mixed with honey and powdered ginger would chase the cold from your bones and the darkness from your dreams. He also claimed his left toe could smell rain. You didn't argue. You glance at the lozenge jar. You've taken 3 this week. You make a mental note to stop at 4. 5 is the point where dreams stop poetic and start resembling temple murals painted during an earthquake. Your mouth still tastes like a coin purse. You sip water, but it doesn't help. You lie back, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere up there, the wind stirs the roof tiles, and your inkstone dreams creep back in. Inkstones, solid, stoic, slightly smug, are the tools of your trade, and the silent judges of your midnight handwriting. Yours is carved with a dragon, which you once tried to paint with gold leaf until the leaf melted in sesame oil. It now has a faint, embarrassed shimmer. You think of how many nights you've leaned over it, grinding pine suit into swirling black puddles, crafting tonics, recording dreams, jotting down patient gossip. Inkstones, unlike scrolls, never lie. They absorb, retain, whisper back. Once, after an especially long week, you fell asleep mid-formula and woke to find a snail had crawled across your ink, leaving a silvery trail that spelled what looked like the character for sigh. You framed it. Historians still argue whether mercury was genuinely medicinal or simply a reflection of how desperate people were to taste something shiny. Official texts recommend it sparingly, usually in paste form, mixed with cooling herbs. But the more fringe documents, especially those from northern border towns, claim mercury can sharpen dreams, soften sorrow, and even reverse heartbreak. You tried that once. The dreams were vivid, the sorrow stayed, and your pillow smelled like vinegar for a week. You sit up again, turning your head this way and that. Your tongue, thankfully, is no longer silver, just vaguely glittery. You glance at the inkstone, still moist from earlier use. You dip your brush and begin scribbling again, not formulas this time, but fragments. Tongue of moon, lips of tin, ink runs uphill. What did I drink? You chuckle. A terrible poem, but one you'll keep. You stamp it with your tiny fox seal and tuck it under the inkstone like a secret. Then, a knock. Soft, hesitant. You sigh and shuffle to the door. It's your neighbor's grandson, wide-eyed and holding a bundle wrapped in old calendar paper. Grandmother says she's hearing voices in her molars. You pause. Molars. You ask. She says they hum, right? Probably a sinus thing. Maybe ghost proximity. Hard to say. You hand him a sachet of peppermint, angelica, and very mild eucalyptus. Tell her to chew gently and avoid political conversation. He nods solemnly and trots off. You return to bed, rubbing your temples. Mercury. Teeth. Ink that whispers. You lie back down, but you don't close your eyes. Not yet. Your brain is still humming, not unlike your neighbor's molars. You reach under your pillow and pull out the tiny jade tile you keep there. A leftover from a long, forgotten dream exercise involving balance, tranquility, and unverified acupressure theories. You press it to your brow. Cool, grounding. You finally exhale. Inkstone dreams mercury teeth, neighbor ghosts, and a cat who dreams of nothing at all. The night is almost done. You just hope your tongue stays the right color till morning. The sky outside your paper window begins to hint at dawn. Not sunlight exactly, but the subtle withdrawal of night's heaviest shadow. You turn your head slowly on the bean-filled pillow and blink at the nightstand. It looks like it always does. Familiar, chaotic, somehow reassuring. You sit up, joints popping in, that charming way that says, you've definitely been sleeping on uneven boards. Your quilt slides off your shoulders and pools at your waist. The lamp has burned out, the wick curled into a tiny black twist. You don't remember blowing it out. You reach for your water jar and find it empty. You smile, evidence of hydration. Also evidence that at some point in the night, you made a semi-conscious decision to be healthy. Congratulations, past you. You glance across the nightstand at the debris of dreams a half. Written scroll with smudged ink. A sticky rice paper packet you never labeled. One dried plum pit with a nibble missing. Probably the cat. Or a mouse. Or you, in your sleepwalking snack phase. You never ruled that one out. The jade box sits quietly in its corner. The root man's still inside. Still judging. The inkstone is dry. Your brush, resting on the ceramic dish, has fallen over like a tiny drunk monk. You don't bother fixing it. You stretch, arms overhead, and a few crumbs of licorice root fall from your sleeve. You brush them away. Your nightstand has become part bed, part lab, part confessional, a daily archaeological site for the soft and sometimes absurd chaos of your life. You look around the room. Scrolls stacked too high. Jars labeled in half, faded ink. A sachet of lavender that's more dust than scent. A bundle of spirit charms tied with gold thread, still humming faintly in the corner. Everything in its place. Everything slightly askew. You hear movement downstairs. The apprentice lighting the stove, grumbling about rats. You'll lie and say you slept beautifully. He'll pretend he believes you. Then he'll ask if he can try one of the dream powders. You'll say no. Then hand him the weakest one anyway. Your breath fogs faintly as you exhale. Morning still carries a chill. You turn back to your nightstand. The final glance before you rise. Your eyes fall on a tiny scrap of parchment you hadn't noticed before. It reads, woke at fourth watch. Dreamed of plum trees dancing. Prepared salve for demon boils. Must buy vinegar. You smile. You didn't write that? Your apprentice did. You'll keep it? You rise slowly, joints cracking like small fireworks, and gather your robe. The day awaits, bull's phlegm, heartbreak, dreams. Maybe someone will ask again about ox gallstones. Maybe Auntie Lynn will return with updates about the effects of tiger bone cordial. Maybe you'll find a new herb that reminds you of tangerine and sorrow. But this morning, Right now, you're just a man beside a nightstand, scattered with medicine, mistakes, half wishes, and the powdered memories of the night. You open the window. Light filters in like warm broth, soft and golden. The air smells of steamed rice and dew, wet clay. Time to begin again. The light settles now, slow and soft, like broth cooling in a porcelain bowl. You've wandered through the long, meandering hours of night with nothing but dreams, dried herbs, and one particularly judgmental ginseng root to keep you company. You've stirred powders by lamplight, dodged mice, soothed ghosts, and puzzled over ancient instructions written by half-mad alchemists with too much ink and not enough sleep. And still, you're here, resting now, or just about to. Your limbs heavy, your breath slower, your thoughts like soft clouds passing through a sky no longer troubled by worry. Everything you've touched tonight, each tiny jar, each scrap of scroll, each whisper of cinnamon or vinegar or mulberry bark, has done its part to ease you through the strange poetry of insomnia. And as dawn blooms and the first bowls are filled, the first tea leaves unfurl, and the first door hinges creak open across the alley, you stay still. You stay quiet. Let the rest of the world rattle and bustle and boil itself awake. For now you can remain here in the warm memory of an ancient room, where the dust is fragrant, the pillow is firm, and the nightstand holds just enough strange magic to carry you gently into sleep. Close your eyes. Let go. The root man won't move. The inkstone won't spill. The dreams will wait for you, right where you left them.